It's Tier List Tuesday. Always been a cool day. What's going on with y'all, big dog? And it is an amazing day for Yu-Gi-Oh! I hope that your day is going phenomenal. But if it isn't, don't let what happened at the beginning of your day ruin the rest of your day. Speaking of such, you already know it's Tier List Tuesday, boys! And today we're going to be taking a quick detour. I know I told you yesterday I would be making a staples tier list. I thought that today was next week. We'll do that next week, I promise you, as I'm going to be going over the top budget tier list. And this is going to be post Ghost from the Past 2. That's right, big dog. There are some crucial reprints that you need to know about from Ghost from the Past 2. This completely changes the entire landscape of budget and competitive decks. But let's go ahead and jump on into this tier list so I can better describe what I'm talking about. I have 5 different categories here. Top budget are the best budget competitive decks. Of course, yesterday I made competitive budget decks that you can make for under $50. So go ahead and check that out if you can. But these particular top competitive budget decks are not under such limit. They are still budget, but these decks are the best bang for your buck, the most competitive to the most budget. After that is the next budget. These particular decks may not be the top budget decks, but they're still really good and a very good bang for your buck. Decks that will take time or strategies that either aren't as competitive as you would want them to be or will take a long time to build. Then there's the strategies that are a complete hole in your wallet. These are uberly expensive strategies or strategies that you will be paying into and not getting the return that you may be looking for. And then of course, there is everyone's favorite, oh no, what are you doing, baby? If you are playing these particular budget decks or these particular decks in total, you are giving your opponent the free win. I try to avoid this is because a lot of these decks are really competitive, but let's go ahead and jump on in and start with Dino. I personally feel that Dino is the top budget competitive deck. I actually just participated in the LA regionals of 800 people and came in 73rd. I came to the very last second, the very last game possible. If I would have won that last game, then I would have gotten my invite. Now, if you want to see a Dino deck profile, go ahead and let me know, as this deck completely crushes the meta. Ultimate Conductor Tyranno still does Ultimate Conductor Tyranno things. And while yes, this deck can be expensive, cards like Pot of Prosperity and Small World are definitely considered not budget cards. But in actuality, throughout the entire event, I didn't need either of those to be able to compete. Therefore, this is a fairly budget deck when you look at it in its core. Now, there is one card that may stretch the budget that I feel you personally need, and it is Access Code Talker. This card just makes the deck completely easy, free wins. That plus Ultimate Conductor Tyranno is literally an OTK, but it's not mandatory for the deck. Dinos are a very solid option and are fairly cheap to get, so if you are a Dino player, go ahead and stand up, as this deck is too strong in this particular format, being able to break some of the best boards with ease. Next, moving on to Burning Abyss. I have to actually put Burning Abyss in the will take time category. I don't think that Burning Abyss is a bad deck whatsoever. Being able to make Divine Arsenal AA Zeus is always a go-to thing for this, and Beatrice Lady of the Eternal is a fairly good card. The deck is also fairly cheap. Most of the Burning Abyss come either common or rare and are fairly easy to get. But the problem with Burning Abyss is its competitive relevancy inside of this format. Despia players, I hope, are getting really smart and understanding that Masquerade the Blazing Dragon can be an OTK against decks that activate a lot of monster effects. Burning Abyss. This is also a strategy that cannot play the branded fusion really well, and while these other engines are fairly expensive, Destiny Hero, Phoenix Enforcer, and the Rite of Aramesir Invention token engine, this deck couldn't play those either. It's in a really awkward spot. It's not a terrible deck, but definitely if you are playing this deck, it will take time to get acclimated to this deck, and only the best of Burning Abyss players will probably be able to navigate this through the format. From there, Adamancipator actually got some huge support inside of Ghost from the Past 2. The new fossil cards in Ghost from the Past 2 make fossil fusion very viable for Adamancipator. And right now, Adamancipator as a budget deck is fairly cheap, really good, secretly deceptively good. I want to say one of the biggest things that you would have to reach for Adamancipator would be Appaloosa, the Goddess, but also being able to incorporate Fossil Fusion inside of your deck, which will allow you to manipulate your opponent's graveyard and summon some really good fossil cards. Fossil Warrior Skull Knight is being reprinted in Ghosts from the Past too, so be on the lookout for an Adamancipator Prank Kids fossil deck that will actually be combo-tastic and fairly good on a decent budget. Moving forward, where would I rank Invoked? Well, Invoked can actually evolve and would be a top budget deck. Not only did all of the Invoke cards get reprinted in our last Gold Series set, making Mechaba and Invocation easy to get gold rare cards alongside of Alistair, this deck actually can be combined with the branded Fusion deck to make an incredible deck. I actually really considered playing this deck at the regional because of Super Polymerization being so good for this deck. Legitimately, Super Polymerization can out any particular situation. Prank Kids Battle Butler and Wandering Griffin Rider typically aren't cards that you can naturally Super Polymerization, but Alistair the Invoker can turn those into an Invoked Ragin, which is an excellent source of disruption, and of course, you get to get rid of the opponent's threat. I gotta say that this is a ridiculously good deck, and with the right pilot, it is a top budget deck. Altergeist is not a bad deck whatsoever, and I don't think that it's a deck that is fairly expensive. There's not a single card that comes to mind when it comes to Altergeist, but the only problem is Altergeist is in the same spot as Burning Abyss. Because it can't incorporate any of the budget cards like Branded Fusion Engine or any of the expensive cards fairly well, Altergeist kind of sits in that tweener space. But when this deck goes first, I mean, yeah, it can completely turn the game on its head and run the entire meta. But the problem is, you gotta go first. This is also a deck that is known for not playing many hand traps because you need those trap cards to be able to come back. I do think that Altergeist is a decent, fairly good trap deck, but unfortunately, I don't think that it's its time right now. Cyber Dragons, guys, yo, this deck is actually a lot better than what people think. I genuinely do think it is a hole in your wallet though, because any self-serving Cyber Dragon enthusiast knows you got to get the ultimate rare Cyber Dragons. You also got to get the Ghosts from the Past Cyber Dragons. You got to get the high-end YOLO swag. But let's say you're coming in as a budget player, of course, and you want to get the budget Cyber Dragon card just to play with and hold on to your expensive stuff, then yeah, this is a pretty good deck. I think it's the next budget deck because of the branded fusion, meaning that you don't have to play a Red Eyes Dark Dragoon or Destiny Hero Phoenix Enforcer. Branded Fusion is also a one-card OTK for this deck, so it does add an extra element that the other two engines did not add. Cyber Dragon is really, really good, and be on the lookout for those Ghost Rare Cyber Dragons from Ghosts from the Past too. Adamancipator, I think, is in the tweener. I definitely think it's a next budget deck. The problem, actually no, it's in the Will Take Time, because the card that I thought of to make this deck cracked is kind of expensive and probably is a card that you should be picking up right now. The card that I was talking about is Crossout Designator. This card is really good in this particular format since there are so many hand traps, but the problem with that is that a top tier deck in Despia actually plays it as well, and I think it's one of the best cards to play inside of the strategy. That of course will drive Crossout Designator's price up. Currently it is a $30 card, and that's already an expensive card for budget players to be able to attain. There's also Access Code Talker, almost a must-have for the Ignister strategy. But if you do dedicate yourself to a deck that wants to summon a monster that's unaffected by card effect, has the room to play a ton of hand traps, and stop your opponent's hand traps, this is a fairly good link-based deck. DDD, we talked about this in the budget decks under 50. DDD is easily an amazing deck. Not only does it handle so many situations extremely well and doesn't play any of the engines that are extremely expensive or even the branded engine, DDD has confirmed reprints from Ghosts from the Past too, making it an even cheaper version of what it is. I gotta say, DDD is a top budget deck. Next is Code Talkers, and because of Ghosts from the Past 2, we get Decode Talker, Heat Soul, as well as a couple of other cards like Proxy Horse. I genuinely think that this is a top budget deck. Decode Talker, Heat Soul, I don't expect to be more than $5. Neither will Proxy Horse or anything else. This deck it's amazingly cheap, especially because of the reprints to cards like Code Radiator and other cards alike. Even the Mathmech Prime Edition, if you guys want to go Mathmech and just say, is this Cybers? Yes, this could be considered Cybers or Code Talker. It's legitimately a top budget deck, and I'm excited to show you how powerful this deck is extremely soon. Despia, guys, where would I put Despia? There's no strategy that is a hole in your wallet. Is Despia a hole in your wallet? Fortunately enough, Ghost from the Past 2 has confirmed reprints for not only Aliber and rarity upgrades for other Despia cards. It makes it a lot cheaper. The only problem is that while it is upgraded from a hole in your wallet, it is still a will take time deck. And allow me to explain. Aliber Jester of Despia is currently a $100 card, and that its max price was about $150. If you guys think that one reprint from Ghost from the Past inside of a 100+ set will make this card tumble to dollars, no, it won't. I can see the ultra rare copies of Aliber being $30 each. You're gonna need 3, and that's gonna put you already at the $90 threshold for 3 cards. There's also Crossout Designators, a card that I just talked about that was really good for this particular deck. And unfortunately, you're probably going to need for Despia. On top of that, you're going to need cards like Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, hand traps that can really compete inside of this format. This almost feels like a hole in your wallet, but it escapes that strictly because this is one of the best decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zombie World, unfortunately, guys, it did get the reprints that it needed. It's still a deck that will take time to fully mature. We got Doom King Ballardrock and Zombie World, as well as the ever so powerful Necro World Banshee as reprints inside of the set. This is also a deck that can play Branded Fusion using its effect to send Necro World Banshee from the deck to the graveyard. That's too strong. I also got to say another thing about this particular zombie deck is that super polymerization is amazing. You would think that this is the format for zombies to be able to thrive. The problem with that though is still consistency with zombies and also being able to find the correct build. I'm really working on something to make zombies incredibly powerful, but we gotta wait a little bit longer. I think that it's a very solid deck. Dragonmaid is a deck that is the next budget. I did mention that you could play Branded Fusion inside of Dragonmaids and get away with it. Yes, I still back by that. We actually had a conversation in my Discord because a player thought that you couldn't play Branded Fusion successfully in here. I gotta say that you very much could. House Dragonmaid or Kitchen Dragonmaid plus Branded Fusion is full combo, as well as the ability to be able to get the important Dragonmaid cards from your deck to the graveyard, allowing you to jumpstart your plays. This deck can also not play the Branded engine and just play a Synchro engine, making Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon and abusing Dragoonity monsters or just straight up Dragon monsters. Dragonmaid is a very good budget-friendly next economical deck. Drytron is 100% a hole in your wallet, and I'm not saying this just to say this. This is a strategy that absolutely needs Destiny Hero Phoenix Enforcer. That is a $100 card. You also need Dasher and Destiny Hero Celestial, which granted can be a lot easier to get, but Predaplant Vert Anaconda is the cherry on top. On top of that, the reason why I say that this strategy is a hole in your wallet is because it requires a lot of brain power. You genuinely have to be dedicated to the Drytron strategy in order to master this strategy. And then still, you get shafted by a lot of decks inside of this meta, so it may not be the best investment, especially if you are a budget player, knowing that you have to play this deck for a considerable amount of time. Drytron is in no way bad, but it's definitely a pretty big expense. You do need some of those expensive cards, and statistically, Drytron has not paid off for the amount of money that you would want to, or you would have to put into it. Eldlich is easily a top budget deck, guys. Come on, stop playing with Eldlich name. Play those trap cards, be that guy. Only Eldlich the Golden Lord inside of your main deck as your only monster, and everything in this deck is kosher. Being able to activate all of the floodgates, Rivalry of the Warlords, and Goes and Match on the same turn, and then being able to get rid of them with Eldlich the Golden Lord at your leisure, playing those amazing floodgate cards to devastate your opponent. And for the players that cannot afford skill drain, well, that's unfortunate, but lose one turn is an excellent alternative to skill drain for the players that cannot afford it. So, Shaddoll. Pure Trap Shaddoll is actually really, really good. Of course, it's pure Trap Shaddoll with a branded engine. You get 6 Shaddoll fusions, making it an amazing going second deck, but you also get super polymerization as well. So you get 9 going second cards for this particular deck. And then of course you get some amazing trap cards to be able to stop your opponent. This deck actually topped the Las Vegas, the LA Regionals as well. And it's a fairly formidable deck, as you don't necessarily need a ton of expensive cards to be able to pilot this deck correctly, but Ulti Construct is the move. Because Ghost from the Past 2, Floowandereeze is easily top budget. You get Rise of the Mega Monarch inside of here. I hate this deck. Like, I went from loving Floowandereeze and telling you guys it's the best deck ever to completely hating this deck. but it is extremely cheap to get with Rise of the Mega Monarch. The most expensive card that I can think of that you'll have to get is Harpy's Featherstorm, which is an amazing card, being able to negate all your opponent's cards, but also being able to get Floowandereeze at Vinny the Adventure, which is also a $15 card as well. Other than that, this deck is fairly cheap, fairly easy to get, and is extremely rewarding if you like pissing players like me off. Ghostricks, guys. Ghostricks are cheap. They're very, very expensive because here's the reason. So a good Ghostrick build doesn't really play any Ghostrick cards, but it plays engines like Rite of Aramesir with the Faithful Adventure stuff. It plays a lot of expensive level 3 monsters that need to summon themselves to the side of the field. And you'll start off feeling like you're not playing Ghostrick as you're just turboing out Alucard and then making mischief and then going into the Link 1. But the rest of your board doesn't even look like a Ghostrick board. If you guys are getting into the strategy, I do wish you the best, but this is really expensive for a deck that is not competitive whatsoever. Goki was actually in my top budget decks under 50. A lot of people sleep on Goki Power Ogre as it's unaffected by other card effects, and that can be a really big doozy against a lot of strategies in Yu-Gi-Oh! Dark Magician is legitimately, guys, a hole in your wallet. This deck is just extremely expensive. Magician Souls and Illusion of Chaos are mandatory inside of this deck, and that already is a huge number. I think that might be like $250. And then on top of that, there's still Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. This deck is incredibly expensive. It's a really solid deck. I think it's a low-end tier 2 deck, but is ridiculously expensive with no reprints in sight. Earth Machine, I want to put this at the next budget. I think that you have to be an incredible player to be able to play Earth Machine. And Skill Drain is an expensive card that is it feels mandatory inside of this deck, as Floodgates really do help you win. Regardless, Earth Machine does not need its extra deck. So there's that. You know, you don't have to spend a lot of money on the extra deck if you go the Machina route that I did in the Las Vegas regionals, and is a fairly good deck at being able to make boards, break boards, summon huge machine monsters, and go for game. The new Agent deck is a deck that I still have the jury out on. I've been playtesting with it, and it doesn't feel like a really solid deck right now, but we're still in the beginning stages. One thing I do have to point out is that the Agent Venus still summons 3 Shine Balls to your side of the field, and then you can summon them again with the dark version of the Agent Venus, which makes this deck incredibly amazing at being able to spam on monsters. Only time will tell if this deck is worth it, but I genuinely think that it'll be a very cheap deck that you can pick up and maybe have some fun with. Plunder Patrol is easily the next budget. This deck is amazing, and since it got its reprints inside of Ghosts from the Past, actually, nope, it still will take time. Well, I'm gonna put it in between because Magician Souls is a card that players do play inside of this deck, and obviously that's expensive. But if you don't play it, everything else just got reprinted inside of Ghosts from the Past too, making it a fairly cheap deck. Prank Kids is one of the best decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! But not only are players really citing for this, you're going to need your Fateful Adventure and your Destiny Hero Phoenix Enforcer package eventually. That alone is about $500 for both of those engines. It is incredibly expensive. Next is going to be Rocket Dragon Link. Obviously, this deck is a top budget deck, guys. Because of the structure deck Albaz, you got Starlead Safer and Chaos Dragon Levianeer reprints. You got Black Dragon Gallop Serpent and White Dragon Wyverbuster. This deck actually got a lot cheaper just with that structure deck reprint, which is very much welcome. Solomon Grade, I think, takes a really good player to be able to master. Because we're in a format where hand traps are really good, that's great for Solomon Grade. But the bad part about Solomon Grade is that it is extremely hard to keep up with some of the top decks in the format. Now, I forgot his name, but I'm going to put Sharks at the next budget. This is for you, dog. This is for you. I forgot your name right now. I cannot remember, but this is for you, all right? Sharks are good. Sharks are good. And he actually pointed out one thing. Sharks can make some of the most gruesomest boards. You know what I mean? You get the double totally awesome. You get Utopic Draco Future, but more importantly, this deck is fairly cheap. I think Utopic Draco Future is your most expensive card at about $30. But after that, everything is pretty cheap. And then we can expect reprints for cards like Bahamut Shark inside of Legendary Duelist Abyss. Sky Strikers is a deck that obviously will take time. Sky Striker Mecha Widow Anchor is still fairly expensive. There are just some really expensive cards for Sky Striker. Well, not really expensive, but decently amount. But this deck is still really good inside of Yu-Gi-Oh! Being a 4-year-old deck and still competitive. Sword Soul, unfortunately, is a hole in your wallet if you're a budget player. Incredible Ecclesias, if I remember correctly, are still $50 each. That's $150. Moyes are $20. That's already $210 for about 6 cards. Unfortunate, because this deck is still really, really good. One of the best decks. And shout out to my boy Ken for topping with this deck. You did an incredible job. I know I haven't been able to get to you, but there you have it. Phantom Knight is amazing, but unfortunately, it is another deck that is a hole in your wallet. And the reason being is because this is a strategy that does need that adventure token engine. If you don't play the adventure token engine, it's a deck, it's better, but the problem is the adventure token engine inside of a hand trap format is what's protecting you from being hand trapped to death. So it's one of those, you gotta have to have it to play it at the highest level. Tri-Brigade got some amazing support inside of the branded structure deck, the Albat structure deck, and that makes it easily a top budget deck. You don't even need Destiny Hero Phoenix Enforcer inside of this strategy anymore, making this a fairly cheap, very good alternative for budget players. Virtual World can be played in so many different ways, which is ridiculous. And one of the cheapest, most effective ways is just to play Punk Virtual World. Now, the problem with Virtual World is that decks don't really care about being banished right now. And Juche, while being powerful, you're going to need some other disruptions. Virtual World also does struggle with playing hand traps inside of the build, as there are so many Virtual World cards you need. But it is so cheap, you can actually get away with so much for this deck. And lastly is Heroes. Because of Ghosts from the Past 2, this deck is a lot cheaper than what it was, which is thank you so much, as this deck did get the reprints of Vision Hero Ferris and Increase, making this deck a lot easier to get when Ghosts from the Past 2 drops. With that being said, I think it's a very solid going second deck, being able to use cards like Lightning Storm, Super Polymerization, Dark Ruler No More, wipe your opponent's board, and then control all. Destiny Hero Phoenix Enforcer. No, it's no play. No. You still need that card. Why is this deck so expensive? I completely forgot about. Oh man, that's crazy. I was like, you still need Destiny Hero Phoenix Enforcer, which is whatever. And that is all that I have for the budget tier list. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Is there some other budget strategies you think I forgot? Is there a place that you think that these budget strategies should be a little bit differently than the tier list? Go ahead and let me know. You can also check out these amazing videos. And if you want to see Master Duel content, a Master Duel tier list, check out Master Duel Cali down below, as I'll catch you on the next video. Have an amazing day. And remember, change the rest of your day for the good if it isn't going good for you.